My husband had been dead for exactly 6 days when the doorbell rang. I remember that sound more clearly than I remember the funeral, more clearly than the priest's voice, more clearly than the cold dirt falling over the polished wooden coffin that supposedly held the man I had loved for 7 years. The bell didn't ring loudly. It was soft, almost polite, just one small chime echoing through a house that had forgotten what normal sounds were. Since Nathan died, every corner of our home had become a museum of unfinished moments. His black coat still hung by the door. His running shoes were still near the hallway mat, one slightly tilted like he had kicked them off in a hurry. His favorite blue mug was still in the sink because I had not found the strength to wash it. Washing it would mean admitting he would never drink from it again. I was 5 months pregnant, widowed, exhausted, and barely standing. My body was carrying his child, but my heart felt like someone had hollowed it out with a knife. I had not slept properly since the accident. A trucking collision on an icy road outside Denver. That was what the police report said. Nathan had been driving back from a client meeting, and by the time the officers reached the scene, his car was folded into metal and smoke. They told me he died instantly. They said there was nothing I could have done. People say things like that when they want grief to be neat and simple, but grief is never simple. It follows you into the kitchen, into the shower, into the baby's first kick. The doorbell rang again, longer this time. I stood in the hallway, one hand on my stomach, listening. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted everyone to leave me alone. But something about that second ring felt different. Not friendly, not comforting, urgent. I opened the door still wearing Nathan's gray hoodie, the one that smelled faintly of cedar soap and winter air, and I found a woman standing on my porch with a little boy beside her. She was beautiful in the tired way some women are beautiful when life has already burned them once and left them standing anyway. Her dark hair was tied low at the back of her neck. Her coat was beige, her face pale, her eyes red but dry. She didn't look like a neighbor. She didn't look like a delivery person. She looked like someone who had been rehearsing a sentence for a very long time. The boy held her hand tightly. He couldn't have been older than 5, maybe 6. He had dark brown hair, a small, serious mouth, and gray eyes that made my chest tighten before my mind could understand why. Gray eyes. Nathan's eyes. I stared at him too long, and the woman noticed. She looked at my swollen belly, then back at my face, and something like pity crossed her expression. She did not say hello. She did not ask if I was Emma Carter. She simply whispered, "He didn't tell you about us, did he?" At first, I thought grief had finally broken my mind. "I'm sorry," I said, gripping the doorframe. Her fingers tightened around the boy's hand. "Your husband," she said. "Nathan, he didn't tell you he had another family." The hallway behind me seemed to stretch backward, long and dark. I let out a small laugh, not because anything was funny, but because my brain refused to accept the sentence. "My husband is dead," I said. "You have the wrong house." Her eyes filled then, not with confusion, but with something worse, certainty. "I know he's dead," she said. "That's why I came now, before his mother gets to everything, before she makes me disappear too." I felt the baby shift inside me, a soft pressure against my palm. The boy looked up at me and said nothing. The woman swallowed hard. "My name is Alina," she said, "and this is Daniel, Nathan's son." My knees almost gave out. Daniel. Nathan's father's name. The name Nathan had once told me he wanted to give a son if we ever had one. I stared at the child, at his eyes, at the shape of his face, at the small scar near his eyebrow that looked almost exactly like Nathan's childhood scar in the photo albums. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not possible." Alina's voice broke for the first time. "I wish it was." And in that moment, standing in the doorway of the house where I had planned a nursery, holding my unborn child under my heart, while another woman held the hand of a boy who looked like my dead husband, I understood that Nathan's death was not the end of my story. It was only the moment his lies finally came home. I let Alina and the boy inside because my legs were shaking too badly to keep standing in the doorway, and because a cruel part of me needed to see more, hear more, hurt more, until the truth either collapsed or became impossible to deny. She sat at my kitchen table like she had been there before, though she swore she had never stepped foot in my house. Daniel sat beside her, small hands folded in his lap, looking around with the quiet fear of a child who had learned not to interrupt adult pain. I made tea because my mother had always said hot tea gave the hands something to do when the heart had nowhere to go. I placed a mug in front of Alina and one in front of myself, though neither of us drank. The entire room felt haunted. Nathan's calendar still hung on the fridge. A sonogram photo was pinned beside it with a little magnet shaped like a sunflower. Underneath it, in Nathan's handwriting, were the words, "Baby Carter loading." I saw Alina notice it, saw her face tighten, and for one wild second I hated her. I hated her for existing. I hated her for bringing a child with Nathan's eyes into my kitchen. I hated her for being alive when he was not. But then Daniel coughed softly, and she immediately placed a hand on his back with such instinctive tenderness that my hatred cracked. This woman was not my enemy, or at least not in the way I wanted her to be. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded flat, almost calm, like it belonged to someone standing behind glass. Alina looked down at her hands. 6 years. The words hit me harder than if she had slapped me. 6 years. Nathan and I had been married for 4, together for 7. "That's impossible," I said. "He was with me." "Not always," she replied. "He told me he was divorced when we met. Then later he said things were complicated with his ex-wife. Then he said he had to keep things private because of work." I was stupid enough to believe him because I loved him, and because every time I started to ask too many questions, he would become the man I needed him to be again. She pulled a small envelope from her bag and placed it between us. Inside were photographs. Nathan holding baby Daniel in a hospital room. Nathan pushing Daniel on a swing. Nathan standing beside Alina at a small birthday party, smiling at a cake with the number 3 on it. My hands began to tremble so badly that the photos blurred. There was no denying his face. No denying the blue sweater I had bought him for Christmas 3 years ago. No denying the watch on his wrist, the one engraved with my initials on the back. He had worn my gift while celebrating another child's birthday. I pressed a fist against my mouth to keep from making a sound that would scare Daniel. Alina's eyes were wet now. "I didn't know about you until after he died," she said. "Not really. I suspected something, but he was so careful. Then a woman came to my apartment 2 days after the accident. His mother, Vivian Carter." My head snapped up. "Vivian came to you," Alina nodded. "She told me Nathan had made mistakes, and that if I cared about my son, I would take the money she offered and move away quietly. She said Daniel had no legal claim, no name, no protection. She said if I tried to contact you, she would make sure I lost my apartment, my job, everything." A coldness moved through me that had nothing to do with grief. Vivian had been sitting in the front row at the funeral, holding my hand, telling me I was still her daughter. She had kissed my forehead beside Nathan's grave. She had promised she would help me with the baby. And all the while, she had already known about Alina and Daniel. Maybe she had known for years. "Why did you come here then?" I asked. Alina looked at Daniel, then at my stomach. "Because yesterday, Vivian's lawyer called me. He said Nathan had left behind a trust that named only one child." My hand moved to my belly. "My baby." Alina shook her head slowly. "No, Daniel." The room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. "That can't be right," I whispered. "Nathan didn't even tell me Daniel existed." Alina pushed another paper toward me. It was a copy of a trust document signed 3 months before Nathan died. Beneficiary, Daniel Reyes Carter. Guardian in case of parental death, Vivian Carter. My eyes stopped on one line near the bottom. Secondary provisions sealed until court verification. "There's more," Alina said. Nathan told me once that if anything ever happened to him, I should find a woman named Emma. He said you would know what to do. I don't know anything, I said, the words breaking apart. I don't even know who my husband was. Alina reached into her bag again and pulled out a small silver key taped to the back of a photograph. He hid this in Daniel's baby book, she said, with your name written beside it. I stared at the key. It was old, heavy, and marked with the number 417. And suddenly I remembered something Nathan had said months ago, half asleep after a nightmare. If anything ever happens, don't trust the first story. At the time I thought he meant work stress. Now, looking at a stranger, a child, a secret key, and the ruins of my marriage, I realized my husband had not just lived a double life. He had left behind a trail, and he had expected me to follow it. That night, after Alina and Daniel left, I did not cry. I think some pain is too large for tears at first. It turns the body into stone. I sat at Nathan's desk until the sky outside the window turned black, the silver key lying in front of me like a tiny weapon. The number 417 meant something, but I could not place it. I searched Nathan's drawers, then his old laptop bag, then the closet where he kept tax files and warranty papers for appliances he never registered. I found nothing at first except ordinary evidence of an ordinary husband. Receipts, chargers, cufflinks, a photo strip from our third date, a Father's Day card he had bought for Vivian but never mailed. Then, near midnight, as snow began tapping softly against the windows, I found a small black notebook taped beneath the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet. My hands went numb when I opened it. Nathan's handwriting filled the pages, but it wasn't a diary. It was a list, dates, names. Bank accounts, storage units, insurance policies. I recognized some things. Our mortgage company, his employer, Vivian's private foundation. Other names meant nothing to me, but they were repeated again and again beside numbers that looked like payments. On the last page, written in darker ink, was a sentence that made my blood run cold. If Emma finds this, Vivian already moved first. Underneath that was an address downtown and the number 417. I drove there the next morning before sunrise, even though my doctor had told me stress was dangerous, even though my hands shook on the steering wheel, even though every shadow in the rearview mirror looked like Vivian's silver car. The address led to an old private storage facility near the train station. Unit 417 was on the 4th floor at the end of a narrow hallway that smelled like dust and metal. The key turned on the first try. Inside was not a box of love letters, not cash, not anything I was ready for. It was a room full of evidence, stacked plastic bins labeled with dates, a laptop wrapped in a towel, manila folders with Alina's name, Daniel's name, my name, copies of birth certificates, DNA reports, life insurance documents, photographs of Vivian meeting with men I did not recognize, and one envelope marked, for Emma only. I sat on the cold concrete floor, opened it with shaking fingers, and found a letter from my dead husband. Emma, if you are reading this, I failed you in ways I may never be forgiven for. But I need you to understand one thing before anyone else tells you a cleaner lie. Daniel is my son, and I am sorry. I should have told you. I was afraid of losing you, and then I became trapped in a lie too large to escape. But the lie about Daniel is not the only one. My mother has been moving money through my accounts for years. At first I thought it was family business. Then I realized she was using my name, my signature, my marriage, and my children as shields. When I tried to confront her, she threatened Alina. Then she threatened you. Then she threatened the baby. If I died suddenly, it was not an accident. I read the last sentence 3 times before I understood it. If I died suddenly, it was not an accident. A sound escaped me then, small and wounded. My husband had betrayed me, yes. He had lied to me in a way that destroyed the ground under my feet. But what if he had also been murdered? What if the accident was not an accident? My phone rang and Vivian's name lit up the screen. I almost dropped it. I let it ring until it stopped. Then a message appeared. "Sweetheart, I'm coming by this afternoon. We need to talk about the house and the baby's future. Don't sign anything until I arrive." I looked around the storage unit at the files, at the laptop, at the evidence Vivian clearly did not know I had found yet. Then I saw one more item inside the envelope, a second letter sealed with Alina's name on it. I called her from the hallway. She answered on the second ring, breathless. "Emma, you need to meet me," I said. "Right now." "What happened?" "Nathan left us something." There was silence. Then Daniel's voice in the background asking if Mommy was okay. Alina lowered her voice. "Is it bad?" I looked back into Unit 417, at the proof of a life I never knew, and whispered, "It's worse than bad. I think Vivian killed him." By noon, Alina was beside me on the concrete floor, reading her letter with tears falling silently onto the page. Nathan had written that he loved Daniel, that he was sorry, that he had been weak, that he had planned to confess everything after gathering enough proof to protect both families. Both families. The phrase made me sick. I wanted to hate him completely. It would have been easier. But the files around us painted a darker picture. Vivian had controlled him for years, financially, emotionally, legally. She had forged documents, opened accounts, redirected funds, and used Nathan as the respectable face of something rotten. Alina looked at me across the room and said, "What do we do?" I wanted to say I didn't know. I wanted to go home, crawl into bed, and wake up in a life where my husband had simply been faithful and dead. But my baby kicked hard, and Daniel looked at the old birthday photo in his mother's hands, and I realized Vivian had counted on both of us being too broken to fight. I closed Nathan's laptop, placed it in my bag, and said, "We find someone she can't buy." The person Vivian could not buy was a retired detective named Marcus Hale, and I only found him because Nathan had written his name in the notebook beside the words honest, stubborn, hates Vivian. Marcus lived above a boxing gym in a neighborhood Nathan would never have taken me to at night. He opened the door with a cup of black coffee in one hand and a face that looked like it had been carved from bad weather. He knew who I was before I spoke. His eyes moved from my pregnant stomach to Alina standing beside me, then to Daniel half hidden behind her coat. "So he's really dead," Marcus said. His voice was not surprised. It was tired. "The police say he is," I answered. "Nathan said if he died, it wasn't an accident." Marcus stepped aside and let us in. His apartment was small, neat, and full of old case files stacked like towers. He listened as we told him everything. The second family, the trust, Vivian's visit to Alina, Unit 417, the letter, the financial records. He did not interrupt. He only took notes and occasionally looked at Daniel with something like sadness. When we finished, Marcus leaned back in his chair and said, "Nathan came to me 4 months ago. He thought his mother was laundering money through her charity and through his company. At first, I told him to go to federal investigators. He said he couldn't. He said Vivian had people inside everything, lawyers, bankers, police contacts. He said if he moved too soon, she would destroy both women and both children." Both women, both children. I flinched, but Marcus kept going. "He had evidence, but not enough. He was close. Then he died." Alina whispered, "Was it really an accident?" Marcus looked at the folder in front of him. "The truck driver who hit him disappeared 2 days after giving his first statement. His name was fake. The company that owned the truck dissolved last week. The insurance payout was challenged before the funeral even happened." My throat went dry. "Vivian," Marcus nodded. "Maybe, but knowing and proving are different things." He connected Nathan's laptop to an offline drive and began searching through encrypted files with the grim patience of a man who had spent his life waiting for liars to make mistakes. Hours passed. Daniel fell asleep on Alina's lap. I sat near the window, one hand on my stomach, watching people on the street move through ordinary lives that felt impossible now. Finally, Marcus found a video file hidden inside a folder labeled baby furniture. He clicked it open. Nathan appeared on the screen, sitting in his car at night. He looked thinner than I remembered, frightened in a way I had never seen. "Emma," he said in the recording, and hearing my name in his voice nearly broke me. "If Marcus is showing you this, then something happened before I could fix what I broke. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for Alina. I'm sorry for Daniel. I'm sorry for every night I came home and let you believe you knew all of me. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you alive. I need our baby alive. And I need Daniel protected from my mother." He looked over his shoulder, then continued. "Vivian knows about the trust. She thinks Daniel is the only legal beneficiary because I let her think that. The real trust names both children. Emma, our baby, is included. But the final documents are hidden because if Vivian finds them first, she'll erase them." He swallowed. "There's a safe deposit box at Northlake Bank. Box 417 was only the first step. The bank box opens with 2 signatures, yours and Alina." Alina covered her mouth. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Nathan continued. "I was going to bring you both there after I confessed. I kept waiting for the right moment. There was never a right moment. Cowardice always feels like timing until it destroys everyone." The video ended with him saying, "Don't trust my mother, don't trust her lawyer, and Emma, if she offers to help you raise the baby, run." The room stayed silent after the screen went black. Then Marcus stood. "We go to the bank now." But we were too late. When we arrived, the manager told us the safe deposit box had been accessed that morning by court order, accompanied by Vivian Carter and her attorney. My vision blurred. "That's impossible," I said. "It required our signatures." The manager looked uncomfortable. "According to the documents presented, Mrs. Carter had power of attorney over Nathan Carter's estate and all related holdings." Marcus leaned forward. "Show me the signatures." The manager refused until Marcus quietly placed his old badge and a private investigator license on the desk and mentioned federal fraud. 10 minutes later, we were staring at copies of 2 signatures. Alina's was forged badly. Mine was almost perfect. Almost. I knew why. Vivian had copies of my signature from hospital forms, mortgage papers, baby registry documents she had insisted on helping me fill out. She had practiced. She had planned. And somewhere in that moment, fear turned into something sharper. Vivian had stolen my husband's truth, my child's future, Alina's peace, Daniel's identity, and now she was stealing the last thing Nathan had tried to leave behind. I asked the manager what had been removed. He hesitated, then said, "A sealed envelope, a hard drive, and a small blue birth certificate folder." Alina grabbed the edge of the desk. "Daniel!" The manager shook his head. "No, the folder was labeled Baby Carter." My hand flew to my stomach. Vivian had taken proof that my unborn child had a claim. That evening, when I returned home, Vivian was sitting in my living room with a lawyer beside her and a smile too soft to be real. "Emma," she said, "we need to discuss what's best for everyone." I looked at the woman who may have arranged her own son's death and realized she had no idea I had already seen the monster under her skin. I sat across from her, placed both hands over my belly, and smiled back. "Yes," I said. "Let's discuss everything."